Good morning, viewers. I'm Rabia Akhtar, Director, Center for Security Strategy and Policy Research, University of Lahore, Pakistan. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch our conversations. Today, on this beautiful rainy morning in Lahore, I am joined for a CISPA Conversation series session by Pravin Sawhney, who is editor Force Magazine. Praveen has now become a household name in Pakistan for all those who are interested in strategic dynamics of our region involving India, China, and Pakistan. So today we'll be talking to Praveen about the logic of Sino-Indian disengagement. So welcome, Praveen, and thank you for joining me on this Sunday morning.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Rabia.
Okay. Praveen, as you know, the title of our conversation suggests, there was an agreement last month on, pulling back the frontline troops from the strategic heights around the Pangong Lake. But we've seen that, there still is some, areas of friction and disengagement between India and China about the Depsang, Hot Springs, and Gogra areas. So I would like to have your views. I want you to decode it for Pakistani viewers, for anybody around the world watching us. What does this engagement mean? And is this engagement equivalent to de-escalation as well? So how do you look at it? So please do, break it down for us. Over to you.
Thank you so much. So, as you rightly pointed out, that recently there was a disengagement at Pangang So. Now, that basically involved that on the South Pangang So, where we have the Kailash range. Now, this is within even the 1959 claim lines of the Chinese. So the Indian troops had gone there in a very surprise move, occupied those heights. They overlooked one of the PLA's garrisons there. Now the PLA was insisting that, look, before we proceed any further, basically what is on the table is the September 10 Moscow Agreement, which was agreed to between Indian Foreign Minister Jay Shankar and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. So that is really on the table. The move has to be there. But the PLA was insistent that, look, unless the soldiers, Indian soldiers, will not vacate the Kailash range, we will not move forward. Interestingly, this Pangang So and Kailash range, they have only tactical value, they have no war value at all. But the point was, the only inference that anybody can draw is that this time the PLA was very clear not to give even a tactical concession to the Indian side. And hence they were insisting. Now that it has happened, now what the Indian side is saying is that, look, as agreed to in the ninth round of talks between the two military commanders, we have to look at the other friction points also. And as you rightly pointed out, the other friction points are uh, Hot Springs, Gogra, Dipsang. We have to look at all these. So basically, from the Indian side right now, the issue is that please look at everything. We need to disengage from the friction points. From the Chinese side, now the issue is that we have already got the concession, which you thought you had, we've taken it back. Now, first discuss the Moscow agreement and let's move on that. So that is where we are.
Okay. Do you foresee that? The other part of my question was: is this disengagement equivalent to de-escalation as well? Do you see an equivalence there? And
Right.
how has the nature of threat to India on the line of actual control fundamentally changed after 9 month long standoff, or do you foresee it hasn't changed?
So, right. First of all, you see, yes, disengagement is a good thing because there's no point in being face to face with the enemy. But de escalation, de induction is honestly meaningless. Why it is meaningless is because today, Tibet Autonomous Region for the PLA is both their operational base as well as their permanent habitat. Now, your second part of the question is, has the threat increased or diminished? the threat has increased exponentially. And the reason for that is that, as I said, it is their permanent habitat, it is their operational base, and they've been doing training here for the last 10 months. And they've been collecting a lot of information data on the Indian side movement, which is absolutely valuable in their military planning, should they decide to go to war. So, with each passing day, the situation is strengthening for the PLA.
All right, that's really interesting. Um, I would now like to, because there's a lot of interest in the DGMO's talk and the ceasefire. So there are many speculations and analysis out there about the LOC ceasefire and the talk itself, trying to bring the heat down on the line of control. We have seen Dr. Moeed Yusuf put out a statement that there was no meeting between the NSAs. So that is set aside. Do you, I'll put a spin on it. Do you think Chinese pulled Kennedy on Pakistan like in 1962, Kennedy approached General Ayub and requested not to open another front for India while it was fighting a war with China? And Pakistan agreed. Do you think the ceasefire perhaps came about those lines, Chinese asking to relieve the Indians at the LOC so that they could focus on disengagement with the Chinese? Because apparently it seems that India, perhaps cannot chew and walk at the same time. So how did the DGMO's talk and ceasefire came about, according to you? And how will the changing dynamics on the line of actual control change India's conventional force posturing vis-a-vis China? And how will the LSE threat affect India on the line of control?
Right. So there are a lot of questions in this. Let's go one by one. In my assessment, the Chinese are behind the move. And why I say that is because in October 2019, when Xi Jinping came for the second informal summit to India in Chennai with Prime Minister Modi, this subject had come up. And this was confirmed by Wang Yi. The subject of the trilateral talks between India, China, and Pakistan for peace and connectivity and trade in the region. This subject had come up. Now, having said that, the important thing is not what Moeed Yusuf said or he distanced himself from. The important thing is that Prime Minister Imran Khan, the next morning in his tweet, confirmed that yes, we have done so much. Hereafter, the normalization of relations, it has to be, the initiative has to come from the Indian side. Now, when you talk of normalization of relations, so obviously he is referring to going back to the situation as it was before 5th of August 2019 in Jammu and Kashmir. He was referring to that. Now, the point is that why would Prime Minister Imran Khan, see, the DGMOs are not really important in this game. The game is really at a much higher level, where I see the involvement of the Chinese, I see the involvement of the two establishments, or maybe India was not so much involved, it was simply some pressure was put by Wang Yi there. But certainly I see a very close connect, a very close dialogue, a very close interaction at all levels between India and between China and Pakistan. That is going on. So I see that yes, everybody in Pakistan is on board, the army is on board, the civilian government is on board, and everybody wants peace, and peace is the right thing right now for the simple reason that if you see the agenda of Pakistan, when I see it from the outside, Pakistan now wants peace, it wants connectivity and trade. That is what it's saying will be the high point of our foreign policy. And similarly, it's the same thing that the Chinese are saying. You see, so the thing is that military dynamics on the LC and LAC are entirely different from the big play that is going on. So this is the big play, as I said. Now coming to the two military lines. I have stopped since some time thinking of these two, LC and LAC, as two separate lines. I see them as reinforced one line for the simple reason that in certain domains of war, there will be close interaction between the two militaries. I see that happening, and plenty, there is plenty to substantiate that. You see, which is going on, and it's been going on for the last a couple of years, and suddenly it has, um, the pace has gone up in the last 2 3 years, especially after the events in Jammu and Kashmir. So that has its own dynamics. Now you see the Indian side. Now the Indian side, the big problem is India considers it is in a competition, or there is a regional dominance struggle going on with China. See, so this is that big thing which India believes, or the government here believes, that we are in that struggle. Now, that struggle is a story by itself. I mean, I'll be happy to talk about it should you want that. So, basically, in a nutshell, there is one dynamics which is going on the military side. There is one a big play going on, and then there is a still bigger play, which is talking of India and China. There is a big contradiction here. How can they cooperate if there is a regional dominance struggle going on? So that is where things are in my assessment.
All right, that's really interesting. I do agree that that the game is being played at various levels, but I think we need to have another IR related session on this as to how the regional dynamics will play out. So Praveen, in your writings, in your tweets, which are followed by a huge number of people, and in your videos on YouTube, on your Force, YouTube channel, you say that Ladakh and the decision of August 5th, 2019 has been central to as to how it played out in Chinese strategic thinking and brought about the standoff in the first place. So now, as the two countries move towards disengagement, that 370 and August 5th actions remain the same. So how do you see this situation reconciling when India is not going back to status quo ante, and this disengagement is happening? And so, according to you, the central bone of contention which has brought China to this point of standoff and skirmishes with India remains the same. So how do you look at the situation when status quo ante is not likely anytime soon?
Right. So let's put it like this. Today, the PLA has reached their unilateral 1959 claim line at most places. They are already there. Now, I'm deliberately using the word claim line. I am not using the word line of actual control. But though this was the word which was used by Chow and Lai in his letter of November 59 to Nehru, this was the word LAC. But since the problem started, the Chinese are insisting and calling it only the 1959 claim line. That is what they are saying. Now, what that means is, first of all, when India said that now Ladakh has become a union territory, even Jay Shankar went to China to explain to the people there that, look, from Indian perspective, this is notional, because on the ground, nothing has changed. What nothing has changed is the main objection of the Chinese was that even before independence and thereafter, there has been no border at all between Ladakh and China. There was never a border. So you have created one by saying that Ladakh is now a union territory. I mean, when you say union territory, you are talking of a sovereignty, you are talking of some territory. But the Indian position is that, look, this is notional. But they don't accept that position. Now, having come to the 1959 claim line, they have actually busted that notional thing also. India can keep thinking from their perspective that, look, it is a union territory, but they are at their 59 claim line. And more important than that, they have maintained, and they said that in 2010, the Chinese said that we do not have a border with India in Ladakh. Now you don't have a border. The line of actual control you are calling claim line. Why you're calling claim line is because you want to normalize the no patrolling zones. That will be the new normal. There will not be one line. There will be a zone there. That will be the new normal. And you don't have a border there. Obviously, when there is the next problem, we know that Ladakh again will be under the scanner from two sides, not from one side. So when we sit and think, they have accomplished their aim. They have accomplished the military aim. The military aim was basically to show that there is no way that the Indian military will be able to recover the territories from us. That was the military aim. We are at a 59 claim line. And insofar as the politics is concerned behind that, as I explained to you, that if that was notional, they have busted that notion and they are sitting on the claim line today.
All right, fair enough. I think it brings much clarity. So a lot of people sent in some questions. The earlier 370 question was also from one of our friends. Another question that was sent for you was about, the bilateral mechanisms that already exist between India and China, four agreements, to resolve the border disputes diplomatically. However, there have been some scholars out there or experts who believe that these agreements have been deeply flawed. I think some of it you have already touched upon in your previous answer. What are these flaws that are preventing, resolution of this ongoing dispute between China and India? And if they were to settle this once and for all, going from this point onwards with a new understanding about each other, which has come about in the past year or so, how do you look at these border agreements? Do they need a review? Obviously diplomacy is the way to go about it. Do you see a review of this happening? Of course, China and India both, given the nature of bilateral relations that they have, cannot afford to be embroiled in such sort of a standoff for years to come. So how do you look at that?
Right. So I have an entirely different perspective on this. And my perspective is that when Chinese have come to the 1959 claim line, they have been talking of sovereignty issue. In this 10 months, they have not used the word border dispute at all. They have spoken sovereignty issue. Now, when we talk sovereignty, then we have to recall what General Secretary Xi Jinping has said, that no territory which belongs to China will be given up. Now, that is sovereignty, which means what they have in mind is a reunification with the mainland. And they claim Arunachal Pradesh, they call that South Tibet. There are six prominent places in Arunachal Pradesh. In the last few years, they have given the Chinese name to those places also. So the situation is something like this today. Of that disputed border, which they say is only 2000, which really covers Sikkim and it covers Arunachal Pradesh, they claim that entire thing. And they say, as far as Ladakh is concerned, we don't have a border there. So it is something like you have your cake and you eat it too. See, so that is where the dilemma is. So all those people, analysts, there are a lot of Indian analysts who have been saying that there is a possibility now of a agreement. I say no, things will deteriorate. Things will deteriorate for the simple reason, as I said, this is all about regional dominance. Or let me put it more straightforward. The Chinese have realized that if you see in terms of strategy, the immediate threat is in Western Pacific. The threat comes from the US military. And the area of this threat is the South China Sea. So that was their main focus. And their secondary focus was really India. It was never the primary focus. Now, after this 10 months standoff, in my assessment, they have come to the conclusion that to accomplish the first strategic challenge, they have to first demolish the second strategic challenge. That is where the route goes now. They are not expecting any cooperation from the Indian side at all. And they have said in so many words that we did the Wuhan understanding with you, then you got astray, you have to come back on the track. Wang Yi said all these things in a statement, which basically means that there is no question of a border resolution. The threat remains, it's a permanent threat, it will go on increasing. And they are convinced that there will be no cooperation from the Indian side, at least from the Modi government. They do not see any cooperation. So that is where the situation is right now. And their primary focus today, why their primary focus is this? Because for them, two things are important now. One is the South Asian subcontinent, and one is the Indian Ocean region. And it is India which is they're really the country which is not cooperating with them in this. So that is what it is.
So that's a very interesting take, Praveen. Obviously, you are the expert on it. This is not the primary area of my research, but given some IR germs that I have, I'm just going to push you on this further. Um, so the entire Quad realignment that happened with India at its that was central to you know not, I won't say blocks China's rise. I keep reading this term, but it makes me really uncomfortable because I don't think people understand the magnitude that it would involve to block China's rise. And you, in your writings and in your videos, talk about it, that it's a entirely different trajectory that China is on. And unless India realizes that trajectory, blocking China's rise is not going to happen. But if we were to think if we were to look at this disengagement that has happened and is happening, um, would you say, you wouldn't say, but would you even consider this thought that it is China's attempts to dilute India's role in Quad and also send a signal to its alliances in the region that, look, this is where we brought India down, this is how we have engaged it. And given the nature of our bilateral relationship with India, and given as to how India realizes where it is in the broader strategic dynamics in the region, given as to how India did not retaliate even after 20 soldiers died, sort of bringing India down to a position, cutting it down to size. This is what your strategic partner, on which you're betting all your strengths, this is the reality of your strategic partner. So you probably need to rethink and not put all your eggs in the Indian basket. If we were to go this line, then this could also be a Chinese move to dilute India's presence and sort of importance in Quad. What do you say about it? I know for somebody who does not think on these lines and thinks differently, might have a different take on it, and I would be interested to listen to that.
Right. So the first thing is that it is China is not rising. China has risen. So there is an entirely different connotation then because the entire dynamics changes. It is a risen part today. It is a major part today. And its rise was done a couple of years back when Obama administration was there. So that is one. Second is for Quad and for Indo-Pacific strategy. India, although the weakest link, is indispensable. India is extremely important for so many reasons. India, all said and done, has a professional military. It is another matter that it is preparing for the wrong war. But it has a professional military and it has geography on its side. And it has a huge market on its side. You see, so they understand that if they have to do anything in the Indian Ocean region, they are not bothered about South Asian subcontinent, the Americans or the Quad members. Their main interest is the Indian Ocean region. Then uh, India is indispensable, it is critical. That is number two. Number three, you see, this question keeps coming on that in Galwan Valley, when there was this, fight there, and we lost 20 and they claim to lose 5 or whatever they have lost soldiers, that India did not do any further escalation. See, I think one has to think this deeply. You don't do escalation for escalation's sake. You never do that. War is always about what is your political objective? What are your military aims? Can you accomplish that? Because once you get into escalation, it has its own cycle, it has its own dynamics. Then you don't control that, and certainly you don't control that as the weaker side. You see, so escalation, I think any government in India would not have gone for escalation, and the Chinese never wanted escalation because their objective have been accomplished. So I think anybody who's talking about escalation, I think needs to think again. So I hope I've responded to your 3 points.
Yeah, it does. Like I said, I know that, you think differently about it. And I completely take your point about China not still a rising power. That's, what the Western literature likes to say. It has already risen. And I think the rest of the world needs to, make its peace with it. Um, so you have been, saying that war is imminent. I think in some of your analysis you've already given a 5-year time frame, if I'm not wrong. So what should India, or be doing in the meanwhile, about on all fronts? We've heard in the past year so the rhetoric of the two-front war. You have written about it. What is the practicality of that now? Do you see after disengagement? And also in one of your recent articles, that you wrote for the Wire on March 1st, you said that Modi is likely to sway away from the Wuhan understanding soon. So what is to be expected going from this point onwards? Short-term possibilities of war, the threat of two-front war, do you think that is gone, diluted? And if Modi sways away from the Wuhan understanding, then how do you foresee events unfolding?
Right. First of all, just to make a point, earlier point about you mentioning the Western literature, and they keep saying that China is rising, it's not risen. See, the struggle right now that is going on between US and China on the chips, for the artificial intelligence, semiconductors, microelectronics. What is it about? It is about that they know it is not only risen, there's a possibility or they have leapfrogged in certain areas. So I think this sort of a thinking that it's a rising power. The question now is, will they leapfrog? Now there are two things which are happening. There is a algorithm war and there is a algorithm economics. The economics is the arrival of the fourth industrial revolution, which is where the US worries that China is trying to make a China centric digital order. So China is not rising. China is leapfrogging in certain areas. That's one. Second is that why I say a possibility of war. Because you see, it will be too tempting for a couple of reasons for the Chinese. Why it will be tempting is because the war that I'm referring to is a war where they will have an advantage. They'll have a major advantage of not losing their soldiers. There will be less violence and less bloodshed of their soldiers. See, when we talk of war, what is war? When we say the nature of war, war is about violence and bloodshed. By showing the body bags of one side more than the other, you put the pressure on the political leadership to compromise. This is war. So these guys, the PLA, the war I'm talking to, they will have a first mover advantage in this war. Now, people keep telling me that, look, artificial intelligence is still not perfect. I keep reminding them that, look, the nuclear bomb that was thrown by the Americans, the fat boy, it was crude, it was huge compared to the bombs we have now in the world. But they threw that. They had the first mover advantage. Similarly, in the 1991 Gulf War that the Americans fought with the Iraqi army, you see, this now slowly all the things are coming out. They hardly had any precision weapons. Their networks were very weak. They were imperfect, but they had the first user advantage. So when you have a first user advantage against the adversary, which is not preparing or not will not fight your war, will fight a war which is entirely different. You see, of a very low technology. So you can achieve your big aims and you can send the right messages. I'm not saying it will happen. What I'm saying is that India is moving towards that direction. Why I'm saying that is to answer your third thing. This war is not a two front. I think I have stopped writing two front now. It is, I call this a one reinforced front. Simple. There are no two fronts any longer. Now, what should the government do, government of India do? I mean, this is, I keep writing about this. The only way for the government of India is see how much of a cooperation we can do with China, make peace with Pakistan. And the first thing that you can do, which will achieve a lot, is to normalize the relation. As the Pakistani Prime Minister is saying, you go back to this 5th August 2019 in Jammu and Kashmir. This is doable for the government. If we do that, then we basically make peace, possibilities open up. See, nobody is saying that Kashmir will be resolved today or tomorrow or day after. But what we are certainly saying is that we start talking. If we start talking, then the ways show up, because it is not that the Pakistanis, they don't understand, they are morons. No, they are also very reasonable people who will be quite happy to sit and talk, provided you talk in the equally nice way. That is what is required. So going to court will not help us. Why it will not help us is, for example, I'll give you one example. Americans are telling us today, I read that article by Ashley Tellis and somebody else also writing that, look, during this standoff, we helped the Indians with weapon platforms, fair enough, and we helped them with information. No, we don't want that help. The help which Modi government is not asking them, which will be their test. They should tell them that, look, if tomorrow there are cyber attacks by China on India, which are happening, and these are non-attributable, will you come and physically help us do cyber attacks on China? Tell us that. Or we should ask them electronic warfare. I mean, if Pakistanis can go, the Pakistan Air Force can open a artificial intelligence center and computing center and say that the first project is cognitive electronic warfare. Why can't you ask this from the Americans? It will be a good test how much they stand with you. Nobody is saying they come and fight our war. What we should be asking them is that in these virtual domains, you see, where you don't have to show your hand, will you come and be on our side? The answer is no.
Um, I completely agree. It's not an easy situation, for any of the stakeholders in the region, including extra-regional force, which is the U.S. And I think, yes, it will be a test for India-U.S. strategic partnership. Should India, if India were to ask. This brings me to my last question, and I think partly you have summed up, ways forward. For any government in Pakistan, it is not going to be easy opening doors of dialogue with India without, compromising or appearing to compromise or accepting the August 5th decision. So that's a given. Even these, there were some corners that was speculating that this DGMO's ceasefire, they were equating it with Pakistan accepting the August 5th decision. That is why the space was created. So I don't foresee, a bilateral dialogue opening. What role do you see for US or Biden administration that can bring these parties together, or even China for that matter? Because like you say, and the question that I also posed, if it is the Chinese that have asked the Pakistanis to create space so that India could breathe and focus on disengagement and going forward, can mend its relations with China, whatever, rationale China has for that, and it has several for that. What role do you see for US and China to bring both parties together. And that would not happen without reinforcing or pressurizing India to consider August 5th decision and reversing it. Um, I also don't foresee that happening, India doing it under any pressure. So it's not a very, it's easier to say, it's easier said than done. But going forward, what are some of the tangibles that one can look at if that was the goal?
Yeah, thank you. See, first of all, I do not see any role coming or any sort of help to the two countries coming from America. I disagree with that entirely. First, we've had the experience, the earlier experiences, they don't last very long. Whenever they've come and tried to be a mediator without showing the hand, they never last very long. That's one. Number two, I think today the Americans or the administration is very keen to leave Afghanistan, and they're having far too many problems in Afghanistan. Nothing seems to be working. I don't see even the 1st May deadline will be met. You see, with what is going on, Taliban have made the position very clear. Ghani has to go, simple. And the only people who can help the Americans are the Pakistanis in this. I mean, I don't know to what extent, but given their close ties with the Taliban, they are the only ones who can help. So it is the reverse that the Americans need today the Pakistanis more. I mean, of course, there are other issues. We can keep debating it that, look, there are other things where the Americans are required. Sure, they are required. I'm just taking one instance. So they need them here. But the problem here is that, is this a priority for the administration, American administration? My answer is no. Getting India and Pakistan together is not their priority. They have far too many issues to resolve. And certainly Afghanistan is one of them. So I don't see any role. I mean, you can people. Somebody makes a statement in the State Department, and here speculation starts that, oh, and now we have this Defense Secretary coming here. General Lloyd is coming now visiting India. Now the speculation will start that he'll be pushing India and Pakistan. No, the only country which can do that is China. But China again will be seen as an interested party by India. And more than anything else, the bottom line is this, that ideologically it does not suit the Modi government to make peace with Pakistan. It's simple as that. So, if it is simple as that, ceasefire is certainly a good beginning. At least you see the civilians, both sides are helped. I mean, I would wish that things go further, but I do not see anything great happening unless Prime Minister Modi decides to do something, out of the box, which he's capable of. Otherwise, I don't see happening. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think for now we'll just take the ceasefire and get on with it. The situation, is it's still very serious. I don't think that people should take much comfort in the ceasefire. We should look at steps that will make it sustainable, and there are no easy steps out there to take at this point in time. But thank you so much, like always, for your engagement, for your availability, for your insights, which are brilliant. And they're always, hit a lot of people, right where they should. So thank you so much for engaging with us in CISPA. You have always been very encouraging and supportive of our initiatives. And I look forward to further conversation on the subject and others because this is an ongoing, subject and very dynamic and changing by the day. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, Praveen, and thank you so much once again. Take care.
Thank you very much for having me over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.